Into the heart of a dark, silent forest, a baby's cry pierces the night. A predator lurks in the shadows until a massive bear steps forward. What happens next will break you. The forest was alive with whispers of the wind rustling through the towering pines. Moonlight filtered through the bare branches, casting eerie shadows across the ground. It was the kind of night that made the wilderness feel both haunting and alive, a place where danger could be hiding in plain sight. Emily moved carefully, her breath visible in the cold night air. Every step she took crunched against fallen leaves, but she barely noticed. Her focus was on the faint, desperate cries echoing through the trees. At first she thought it was an animal, maybe an injured fawn, but as she drew closer, the sound became unmistakable. A baby. Her pulse quickened. A human baby, alone in the middle of the forest? It didn't make sense. No one lived for miles, and there was no sign of a campsite or a lost hiker. The cries grew louder, urgent, as if sensing her approach. Then, through the clearing, she saw it. Small, fragile, wrapped in nothing more than a thin, tattered blanket, shivering against the icy ground. Emily rushed forward, her instincts screaming to scoop the child up, but before she could reach it, the sound of heavy breathing froze her in place. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness, low and unmistakably primal. Then, from the shadows, a massive figure emerged. The glow of its amber eyes locked onto hers. A bear, larger than any she had ever seen before. But it wasn't just any bear. It was a mother, and she wasn't alone. Emily's breath hitched as the massive bear took a slow, deliberate step forward. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body was frozen in place. The moonlight reflected off the bear's thick, matted fur, its sheer size making her feel impossibly small. Then she saw something that made her heart stop. The bear wasn't just approaching the baby, it was standing guard over it. Emily's mind raced with questions. Was the bear protecting the baby? Had it taken the child from somewhere? Or worse, was it planning to harm it? The infant let out another weak cry, and Emily's instincts overpowered her fear. She took a hesitant step forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Easy," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The bear let out a low, warning growl, its deep voice vibrating through Emily's chest. But it didn't charge. It didn't show aggression, just caution. That's when she noticed the wounds. Deep, fresh claw marks ran down the bear's side, dark blood seeping into its thick fur. It had been in a fight. But with what? A rustling in the trees behind her gave her the answer. A pair of glowing yellow eyes flickered in the darkness. Then another. And another. Wolves. Emily's stomach dropped. The bear hadn't just stumbled upon this child. It had fought to protect it. The realization hit her like a wave. The wolves must have found the baby first. Whether they saw it as prey or simply an intruder, she didn't know. But the bear had intervened. And now they were all trapped. The wolves stepped closer, their low snarls filling the night air. The bear shifted its weight, its massive frame blocking the baby completely. Emily knew she had only seconds to decide. She could run, save herself, or she could stand her ground alongside the bear and fight for the life of an innocent child. Emily's heart pounded as the wolves crept closer, their eyes gleaming in the dim moonlight. The bear let out a deep, guttural growl, standing its ground between the predators and the helpless baby. The largest wolf, its fur streaked with scars, took a cautious step forward. Its lips curled back, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. The pack was testing their advantage, outnumbering the wounded bear, seeming an easy victory. Emily knew she had to act. Running wasn't an option anymore. Her eyes darted around the forest floor. A thick branch lay nearby, sturdy enough to be a weapon. She lunged for it, gripping it tight as she positioned herself beside the bear. The wolves hesitated, surprised by her sudden movement. But not for long. A smaller wolf lunged first, aiming straight for the baby. Without thinking, Emily swung the branch with all her strength, striking the animal mid-air. The wolf yelped in pain, tumbling to the ground before scrambling back to its feet, snarling. The bear roared, a thunderous, ear-splitting sound that sent vibrations through Emily's bones. It reared onto its hind legs and slammed its paws into the earth with terrifying force. The wolves flinched, but their hunger overpowered their fear. The largest wolf lunged next, aiming for the bear's injured side. The bear twisted just in time, swiping its massive paw across the wolf's face. A A sickening crack filled the air as the wolf was thrown backward, whimpering as it struggled to stand. But the pack was relentless. 2 more wolves leaped forward. Emily dodged one, barely avoiding its snapping jaws. She swung her branch again, connecting with the second wolf's side. The bear turned and caught the first wolf mid-attack, crushing it beneath its sheer weight. Adrenaline surged through Emily's veins. She had never fought for her life before, but right now survival was all that mattered. The wolves hesitated, their confidence wavering. The bear, though wounded, was still standing strong. And now it wasn't alone. Emily steadied her breath, gripping the branch tighter. Then something changed. A distant howl echoed through the trees. The pack froze, their ears twitching. Another howl followed, further away this time. A signal. The wolves, realizing the fight wasn't worth the risk, began retreating. One by one, they slinked back into the darkness of the forest. The leader shot one last glare at Emily and the bear before disappearing into the shadows. Silence fell over the clearing. Emily's hands trembled as she exhaled shakily. They had survived. But the night was far from over. She turned to the bear, its massive chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Blood still seeped from its wounds. But despite the pain, it remained where it was, standing protectively over the baby. Emily took a slow step forward, her eyes meeting the bear's. It had fought for this child, risked its life to keep it safe. And now, Emily had to do the same. The forest was eerily silent now, the only sound coming from the bear's heavy, labored breathing. Emily's hands still trembled as she clutched the branch, her knuckles white from the tension. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, but she forced herself to focus. The immediate danger was gone, but the fight had left its mark. She looked down at the baby, still wrapped in the soft blanket, oblivious to the chaos that had just unfolded. The child stirred slightly, a tiny fist waving in the air before settling again. Emily's chest tightened, then she turned her attention to the bear. It stood tall but unsteady, blood still seeping from the deep gashes along its side. Its breathing was slow and ragged. Despite its injuries, it had not moved from its position in front of the bee as if it still needed to protect it. Emily swallowed hard and took a cautious step forward. The bear's dark eyes met hers. For a brief moment, something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. This was no ordinary encounter between human and beast. The bear had saved the baby, fought for it, risked its own life. Emily knew she couldn't leave it like this. She scanned the forest floor, searching for anything that could help. Her hands found a large strip of fabric from her own torn sleeve. Carefully, she approached the bear, her movements slow and deliberate. "I just want to help," she whispered, knowing the bear wouldn't understand her words, but hoping it could sense her intention. To her surprise, the bear did not retreat. It remained still, watching her. Gently, she pressed the fabric against the worst of the wounds, trying to slow the bleeding. The bear flinched but didn't lash out. Emily worked quickly, tying the makeshift bandage as best as she could. It wasn't much, but it was something. The bear let out a low, rumbling sound, something between a growl and a sigh. Its massive head lowered slightly, exhaustion evident in every movement. Emily exhaled shakily. She couldn't believe what had just happened. A wild animal had not only saved a human child, but had trusted her enough to let her help. A lump formed in her throat. What had brought the baby here in the first place? Who had left it? And why had the bear decided to protect it, instead of harming it? Questions swirled in her mind, but one thing was certain: she couldn't walk away now. She had to find a way to get the baby and the bear to safety. As she knelt beside the child adjusting its blanket, she felt something wet touch her arm. She turned. The bear had leaned forward, its nose brushing against her sleeve as if acknowledging her. Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes. She had come into the forest alone, afraid. But now, in the middle of the wilderness, among the danger and uncertainty, she had found something unexpected. A connection. And a responsibility. Emily knew she had no time to waste. The bear was injured, the baby was vulnerable, and they were still deep in the forest. She glanced up at the sky. Dusk was settling in, casting long shadows between the trees. If they stayed out here much longer, colder temperatures and nocturnal predators would make survival even harder. Her first priority: getting the baby to safety. But how could she do that without leaving the bear behind? She hesitated, looking at the massive creature beside her. Despite the pain evident in its slow movements, the bear remained protective, keeping close to the baby. It was as if the animal had adopted the child as its own. Emily took a deep breath and made a decision. She reached for her backpack, which had miraculously remained strapped to her shoulders through all the chaos. Inside, she found a half-full water bottle and a few protein bars. Not much, but enough for now. She carefully poured some water onto a piece of cloth and held it near the bear's snout. To her relief, the bear licked at the moisture, accepting the small offering. It was a good sign. It meant the bear still had some strength left. Now came the hardest part, getting all three of them out of the forest. Emily adjusted the baby in her arms, ensuring the blanket was snug. Then she turned to the bear. "I don't know if you understand me," she said softly, "but we have to move." The bear blinked slowly, its breathing still heavy. It didn't make any attempt to walk, but it also didn't resist when Emily reached out again. Step by step, she guided it forward. It was slow, agonizingly slow. But they were moving. The forest around them was eerily quiet, as if the other creatures knew what had just happened and were giving them space. The only sounds were the crunch of Emily's boots against the leaves and the bear's labored breathing. With every step, Emily's mind raced. Who had abandoned the baby? Was someone looking for it? Would they even be safe once they got out of the woods? And what about the bear? As much as she wanted to save the animal, she knew the outside world wouldn't be kind to a wounded wild creature. Hunters, park rangers, or even frightened townspeople might see it as a threat. She clenched her jaw. She wouldn't let that happen. Not after everything it had done. The bear let out a low, rumbling noise. Not a growl, but something softer. Reassurance? Acknowledgement? Emily didn't know. But she kept walking, and the bear followed. The edge of the forest was close. Emily could see the faint glow of streetlights in the distance. Civilization, safety. But something felt off. The bear slowed, its ears twitching. Emily froze, her grip tightening on the baby. A rustling sound came from the trees behind them. It wasn't the wind, it was something or someone following them. Her heart pounded. Was it the same predator that had attacked earlier? Or was it something worse? A shadow moved. Then, snap! A branch cracked, and out of the darkness, two figures emerged. Hunters. Their rifles glinted under the moonlight. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure if they were poachers, park rangers, or just men looking for trouble, but the way they moved, the way their eyes locked onto the bear, made her blood run cold. "That's a big one," one of them muttered. His partner nodded, raising his rifle. "And it's injured. Easy target." Emily stepped forward instinctively, placing herself between them and the bear. "Wait, you can't!" The bear let out a deep, warning growl. It swayed slightly, still weak from its injuries, but it planted its massive paws into the ground, standing protectively in front of Emily and the baby. The hunters hesitated. "This thing's dangerous," the second man said. "We can't let it roam this close to town." Emily's mind raced. If she didn't act fast, they would shoot. She took a shaky breath and did the only thing she could think of. She raised the baby in her arms. "You don't understand," she said, voice firm but pleading. "This bear saved this child's life." The hunters exchanged glances. Emily kept going. It could have left. It could have attacked. But it didn't. It protected us. If it wanted to hurt people, I wouldn't be standing here right now. For a moment there was silence. Then, a soft cry. The baby stirred in Emily's arms, letting out a tiny heartbreaking wail. It was the purest, most innocent sound in the world. The first hunter shifted uncomfortably. He lowered his gun slightly. "Is that a baby?" Emily nodded, and this bear made sure it survived. The men hesitated. The second one sighed, lowering his weapon. "Damn," he muttered. The bear, as if sensing the tension ease, relaxed slightly. Emily swallowed hard. "Please, let me get it to safety. I'll make sure the bear doesn't come near the town." A long pause. Then, "Fine." The first hunter slung his rifle over his shoulder. "Get going before we change our minds." Emily nodded quickly, heart still hammering. She turned to the bear, whispering, "Come on, we're almost there." And this time, with no more obstacles in their way, they moved forward together, toward the light.